To see you. Welcome. My name's Carrie Slack, and I'm going to lead a little workshop about discussions in ESD classes. So for starters, and I think we have other people trickling in, if you could write any quick questions you have about facilitating discussion in the chat box, I'm going to keep those in mind as we go. Let's track the chat box. There we go. Okay. Move that. One moment. I got to move stuff around. It's not. There we go. Okay. When to have a discussion and when to skip. Yeah, I'm going to address that, Meg. Good. Awesome questions. Okay, we'll see. Here we go. Okay, so my alternate title for this workshop is Making Every Mistake Twice, and I have a long, glorious list, a beautiful montage of mistakes or poor judgment calls, and so I'm drawing from some of those in this presentation. I'm not doing it because I think I've mastered the art of facilitating discussion, but I do find it interesting, and I think the discussions we can have in ESD classes are super important and can be really nourishing and important. So this is my rough outline. We're going to talk about planning for discussions, making choices about what you want to discuss, and then facilitating the spontaneous discussions. Those are inevitable, and feeling, just expecting them will help you feel more confident. There'll be some general tips in facilitation, some talk about some common difficulties that come up in class discussions, and growing your facilitation skills. I'm gearing this workshop for people who are new to teaching. So some of you more seasoned teachers, you're welcome to be here. I don't know if you'll get anything new or not. We'll see. So first, the question of just why even have a discussion? We could just give them a really good book or a bunch of links to great websites. I think it's fair to spend a little time thinking about why we ought to lead discussions. So we're gonna be hopped into a breakout room. You're gonna have 4 minutes once you land there for you and your partner to talk about the benefits of having some discussion in ESD. So take it away, Rachel and Bayan.
Alrighty, so we're just gonna be putting you in breakout rooms, and we'll be back in 4 minutes. Carrie, you can hear me, right?
Yes.
All right, so I just put everyone in breakout rooms of 2, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, awesome.
It's weird not being able, well, I made the people go away so I wouldn't be nervous, but it's also weird to not have people like nodding or, you know.
It's true. It's true. That's the thing with Zoom, right? It's like we're figuring out a new way to communicate and, you know, talk to each other.
I forgot to just appreciate ESD Global's setting all this up. I'll do that in the end. I hope I remember, but that would have belonged at the beginning. Sorry about that.
No, if anything, thank you. Thanks for offering to give this workshop. That's pretty great, and I'm really excited to learn more about this. Even though I'm not an instructor, but still, it's quite interesting.
Not an instructor yet, I bet. Is that on your radar?
Yeah, true. It is for sure, definitely.
Good.
Of course it is. All right, so Justine is asking for help. I'm just going to join her room to see what's going on.
Bye.
So everyone is given a few seconds just to join. Okay, and we're back.
All right.
Just want to let everyone know that we had the breakout rooms, 2 per room. And now we're back. So Carrie, if you want to take it away.
Okay. So I'd like to hear from a handful of people about what you came up with to answer this question.
All right.
Shall we go with hands or chat, Bayan?
Whatever your preference is, I can unmute everyone individually, or you can just type in the chat.
Okay, so that's your folks' choice. You can hop in the chat or raise your hand and you'll have the floor. How does discussion help learning? This is dispersed responsibility, I think. Oh, here we go.
Oh, Tasha, alrighty.
All right. Are you getting Tasha in?
Yes. All right.
Okay.
So Tasha, we're unmuting you. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, so we did talk about the importance of it, building a sense of community and trust within a group. Also, if people have been through trauma, it gives them a platform to be able to share. The only drawbacks, in it's sort of a dance, right? Making sure that there is enough time to get through the curriculum, and then also leave space so that people can share and be mindful, because there are always certain people who want to share more.
Yeah.
So being able to set a time limit with that sharing and say, you know, I honor your time, I honor your space, I honor your story. And if you would like to talk about it more, we could talk about it after class.
Yeah. Thank you. Beautifully said. And I'm gonna address that some more later. Thank you.
We also have a comment from Mona. You're unmuted, so please go ahead.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, we also talked about, and it gives people an opportunity to talk in a safe environment where they may never have that opportunity anywhere else. So it's really important for that. And learning, they can learn better by participating rather than just being fed information. And also it helps us as teachers.
Yes.
To know where people are coming from.
Yes. Yes. And people say brilliant things.
Yeah.
I'm blown away with the beauty and the wisdom of the words of my students. And they're almost always better than something I've been crafting for hours. Okay, I'm going to look through the chat box here. Yes, facilitating a sense of community, maintaining a flow to the class. Yes. Good practice for discussion outside of class. Nice. Yes, and it gives people a chance to start interacting with the material, because usually they already have some ideas or feelings, and it builds on that. Yes, and you can hear from people with different perspectives and backgrounds. You get a sense of what's important to them, so you can shift your class plan. Yes, thank you, Rachel. There is a lot of fear of messing up, and I think it's tricky, and it's one of the more nuanced skills to like really work to set up a safe container so people have the best shot at feeling comfortable-ish. Yes, Jocelyn, we totally learn things better when we get those clicks for ourselves. Yes. I think it totally increases the aha moments. Yeah, beautiful, Rachel. Hi, Anat, thank you. Yes, all of that and more. And that's a great example of just remembering that you, the leader, the teacher, don't have to have all the wisdom or all the beautiful words. Like when you ask a good, juicy question, people show up for it, generally speaking, and the wisdom of the group just emerges. Yes, Kim, that can give you a clue to, yeah, trauma coming through. Thank you, that was great. I'm planning to address some of those topics, and here we go. Let's keep going. Actually, I want to say one more thing. I've done a lot of group facilitation, both in a classroom setting. I teach social work and self-defense. I also have done a fair amount of clinical work in groups. And this one group I had of all men, mostly working class and poor men, about 85% of the times I would say something, try to get across a concept. I would get mixed reception. You know, people kind of got me, kind of not. And then this very bright, wise man would say it in his own words, and the rest of the group would go, oh, yeah. So I have become quite humble about you know, how I'm going to say something. It's not always going to work for other people.
I just, I'm unmuted. Okay, good.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi. I'm talking instead of typing, if you don't mind. So one of the things that we talk about is when people are adrenalized, if you ask yourself a question and then really try to answer that question, the adrenaline starts to sort of clear. So if we're having a discussion and you're actually answering a question, your brain literally starts to relax and it makes it easier to do all the things that you want to do. And I know for me with high school students, they come in nervous about everything, name it. And then we pick a discussion that they're interested in and they begin to relax. And then, you know, the rest of the class is just easier. So their cognitive brain is adjusted now in a way that we can have a discussion and then, you know, move from there into whatever we need to move into. So that's just my 2 cents worth.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna move along. So I am a big fan of setting agreements at the beginning of class. I think it does, it can really help set the tone, especially if you really flesh them out and make sure everybody understands and is on board. It's not foolproof, that's for sure. But if you're being transparent with your goal of emotional and physical safety, and get them on board to think about what would help us create that. So in a short class, I just already have a handful of agreements written out, and I ask them, you know, we go through them, see if there's understanding and agreement. In the longer class, for many years, I've taught a 21-hour class, so I have the luxury of being able to have it be more of a discussion, and that can be really as valuable as any other discussions, because there's so many principles of respect and empowerment built into those discussions. It's great. Bayan, can you let Tasha?
Yes, so Tasha, if you want to go ahead.
Oh, I had raised my hand earlier.
Oh.
Sorry.
Okay.
No worries.
It's okay. Okay, so here's some sample language. I'm always too wordy. So again, in a longer class, then I'll pose this question. I'll have a big whiteboard in the old days. And I'll ask each person to address the question. And some people pass, and that's always an agreement, is that you have the right to pass. But once we get warmed up, really good stuff is said, and that I can extend and extend the parallels to self-defense. Okay, so these are samples. Listen to understand, not just to respond. Be non-judgmental or open-minded. Speak from your own experience, your own thoughts, your own feelings, your own observation, rather than speaking for other people. I always bring in this premise to the conversation around agreements. And it's sort of not up for debate. That my premise is that people who are violent, who choose violence, are 100% responsible. And we're gonna do our best not to blame people who've been victimized by those folks. And that's not to say that that's gonna stop victim blaming comments from eking out. And actually I would rather have them be spoken so that we can address them. But this is a way to get that premise out there. Something along the lines that we can agree to disagree. And respect for ourselves, for each other, for our limits. And then of course we protect each other's privacy, our confidentiality. I encourage people to share the skills far and wide, but if anybody shares something personal, to keep that private here. Check in the chat. Yes, Rachel, I really like, with key questions, and we sit in a circle, letting everybody have a chance to speak, and they also have a chance to pass, and I always give them, the people who passed, another chance. I find that that gets pretty even participation, and it does tend to keep people who are in the habit of speaking up a lot, it keeps them kind of balanced with everybody else. So I think it's helpful for us to remember, and especially when we're new, that people expect us to lead. You know, even if you still struggle with some kind of imposter syndrome discomfort, or not wanting to, you know, be an authority, when students come to a class, they're not surprised when the teachers lead. That's what they expect. But they are surprised and really disappointed, and often feel unsafe when the teachers don't lead. It can create discomfort and anxiety. So I think this is sort of an ongoing thing to get comfortable with your leadership. And I'm going to say many times in this workshop, you know, to give yourself time to debrief every class, to debrief with your co-facilitator, to take some notes about what you think worked or what didn't work, some notes about what, you know, the things that were iffy, and really make a point, make a commitment to bring those to your conversations with mentors or trusted colleagues so that you can process them. Whoops. So the teachers, we set the agenda, and not that we can't be flexible. I do appreciate Udit saying a shift happens, and it sure does. But, you know, we're in charge of the pace, the transitions, managing the time. And even if you have your agenda up somewhere where students can see it, which I think they appreciate, we're still going to be managing that. Okay, so these are some of the tools that I like to increase student engagement. Once you pick a good question, and I think it's important to be discerning about the questions that you bring to discussion, you give them a juicy question, and then a lot of times I will put them in pairs or triads, but a paired share, listening pairs, where each person has, you know, X amount of minutes to sort out their thoughts about the question. People don't always follow this, but I make explicit that I'm asking them to take turns. So if it's me and Meg, then, you know, we figure out who's going first. I'm going first. I have 2 minutes to think about this, to talk about this question, and Meg gives me her full, kind attention without throwing in her ideas. And then the bell rings, and then they switch. I think that's really important. And even if they shun my instructions and they just talk together for 2 minutes or 4 minutes, that's okay too. Oops. So a round robin is when everybody in the class has a chance to talk. And I like these in succession. So first give the people the question, put them in pairs, let them start thinking about it, talking about it, and then come back and let each person, you know, give them maybe a minute or less to share one thought about the question. Popcorn style is when anybody can speak up. There's no order to it. You probably still need to give a time frame. You know, I think it reduces anxiety when people know what's expected of them, right? Okay, so this is we want to hear from you in a minute or less, or with one word. And then you as the teacher get to decide for each round of discussion whether you really want it to be where just each person gets a chance to share their thoughts. And that may include, I really agree with what Lauren said, blah, blah, blah. I don't consider that crosstalk exactly. Or if you want it to be where people can directly respond to each other. I think there's potential for really rich dialogue either way, but it's your decision. So thinking about what topics you want to have discussions around, I do think we need to choose well. And we're just going to do this for a minute, a couple of people to respond to what content areas do you think are enhanced by discussion. Yes. Beautiful. Thank you, Kim. I think that's important. That's a good way to, if you have the listener tell what they heard, it's a way to check understanding, yeah, and build listening skills. So for sure, there's so much confusion about sexual assault by familiars that really needs to be unpacked. Boundaries. Yes, the barriers to sticking up for ourselves. Yes, gender socialization, big time. Good, these are great. Julie, I'm curious about your answer. I have a guess, but would you mind, could you unmute Julie? Would you mind saying a little bit more about what you mean?
Yes, Julie, just a sec. All right, we're unmuting you, Julie. All right, if you want to go ahead, Julie.
It's okay if you don't. Ooh. Okay. I'm going to assume Julie stepped.
All right, Carrie, if you just want to unmute yourself.
Oh.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I was just appreciating all of the discussion topics. I hope everybody's reading them. I fully agree. These are complex topics, and I think it does help for people to sort them out with discussion. Okay, so now you get to see mine, very similar to yours. An early discussion I have is, what is self-defense? Gets out on the table, the images in people's minds. As I said, I kind of bring up victim blame right in the beginning. And of course, that's going to be something I'm listening for all the way through a class and will speak to. Whoops. Intimate partner violence is so complex. It flows pretty naturally from the clothesline exercise. It's really important, I think, after any skill, teaching any skill, to talk about what barriers might be there, but in particular about setting boundaries. And then how our learning skills, ESD skills as individuals, connects to larger social justice struggles. And that can come up in different places in a class. Oh, thank you, Lauren. Yes, it's helpful to the introverts discussion. Nice. I usually show, in a longer class, show the film Tough Guys, and that sets the stage for talking about gender expectations and socialization. The clothesline exercise is one where you have some kind of symbol of a clothesline and you give people papers with various behaviors. Some are going to be, and then you set up a scale where on the more benign end, it's like, okay. And then the far end, you know, very dangerous. And then each person will share their behavior, like he checks my cell phone, he checks all my messages, and then talks about where on that scale the behavior belongs. Sources of support. Yeah. Okay. And I think it's important, especially for newer teachers, to know that it's okay to not handle all the topics yourself. If you have a co-facilitator, you know, of course you're going to choose the areas that you feel most confident. But if neither of you feel confident around some of those topic areas, you can bring in a guest speaker. I think it's really important. Even though I worked at a rape crisis team for 12 years, I still bring in somebody from our local rape crisis team to talk about sexualized violence and their services, primarily so that my students meet somebody from this organization. And so they have a sense of like, oh, I could talk to her. I think it's a good bridge for supporting survivors getting help. And they do a great job. At least my folks do. If you have a succession of classes, it's always okay to put just tell people, I'll get back to you on that. I'm gonna get some more information. Okay, so here comes talk about the unplanned discussions. As people get comfortable, they're gonna bring up questions, they're gonna bring up scenarios, some of which really deserve a discussion, not just an answer. A few years ago in a teen class of mine, a couple girls actually shared about a current situation at their school where there was a boy harassing girls. I think it's important, like, to hop in right away and to request that they not use identifying information, especially I live in a small town. You really want to keep that clamped down. But then to, like, not only show empathy, but then to get the rest of the class involved in applying the principles that you've already been talking about. with really a present tense or a future focus, okay? I think it's crucial that we as teachers, facilitators, we don't let people start quarterbacking each other's past actions, that you don't critique how somebody dealt with a scary, abusive situation, person. Does that make sense? I need to see somebody nodding here. Does that make sense? Oh, there's a big nod. Thank you. This is my first remote teaching. It's weird.
Can I ask another question on that last
Sure.
thing you said, Carrie? I think that if I think of when I first started teaching ESD, the hardest thing that would happen in class that I felt like I didn't have the facilitation skills to deal with was someone in discussion saying, this happened, I did this, what should I have done? Like in terms of a physical escape or something like that. And I think I cringe to think of what my original answers were when I didn't know how to deal with that. But I mean, what I was thinking of when I was trying to do my best, I think now I'm better now, but trying to make it about, like, first of all, validating that, like, you survived that situation, you did what you could in the moment, like validating that it's not that you did something wrong. I've also had people like press me and be like, no, but I know you know a better answer. Like, tell me what the escape is. And so I don't know. I mean, my answer is better now in that I can kind of balance those two things, but it's definitely, to me, still seems like one of the hardest things. And I'm wondering if you have a formula for that, or, you know, considerations that come to mind for you with how to balance, like, wanting to give them information that they're asking for and also wanting to not do that in a way that makes it sound like we're like, yeah, you're gonna, you know, next time you're gonna know what to do, you're gonna do it right. Like, that's the absolute wrong impression, you know?
Right. Okay, I have a few thoughts about that. First, I love what you said. And I would probably in the agreements conversation already said, look, we all do our best when we're facing some weird, confusing, overwhelming situation, you know, which we're not even sure, is this violence? What is going on? We all do our best. And sure, it's a super normal, understandable question to, you know, when you reflect back on an experience, to think, what could I have done better? Like, just to validate that. Like, I think that's okay. It's not toxic. But for the purposes of the class, like, just keep solid in, okay, any of us could face this. Let's talk about, you know, whatever, you're trying to get out of your car and your shirt gets stuck, and, you know, there's the, you know, like, this is the circumstance. What might be the options, you know? So you put it in the future, and that any of us could face it, and then we can talk about what's possible. Yeah, I like that, Mona, framing options. You know, and I have heard so many ways of saying this through the years. I don't use this, but I do think it's funny. Somebody said, like, in the great whatever of life, in the great Scrabble of life, sometimes all you have is an S, an H, an I, and a T, and that's what you got, you know? And we do the best that we can. And sometimes, especially with all of the hormones coursing through your brain, you're not gonna think as well as you would in a calm moment. And that's the reality for everybody. Okay, I'm gonna look through the chat. I see some chat action. Oh, nice. Yeah, tell me the things you did do. Yes, always helping people see the things that they already did that are solid self-defense. Yeah, and I will say many times as I teach techniques that, you know, this has worked for many people and it's not worked for somebody. There are circumstances where this won't work. And, you know, I wish that weren't true. You know, I'd love to say, oh yeah, this is 100%. But to lay that out there and to help people retrain their minds, like, okay, that's not working for some reason. What else is available? What are my other options? These concepts kind of build on each other and reinforce each other. I'm looking to the chat now. Thank you, Justine. Yes, there's no one right way. Yeah. Yeah. And that, to me, all of this tends to come out of an early discussion about what is self-defense. Beautiful. I think you really got a good representation of the spectrum of answers there. Anybody else want to throw in on that question? Okay, I'm moving on. So, okay, we're back to an unplanned topic. If it's complex and it's not on your agenda, you have a quick decision to make. And these are the choices I see that you have. You can just decide to focus on it, make a change, shift happens. This is what I usually do. I really want to honor what's coming up in the group. Sometimes I'll set an alarm, or I'll ask somebody to set an alarm so we keep it, somewhat time limited. Or if you're really tight and you just can't do it, be honest about that. And if you can, offer to discuss it after class, during a break, in the future. I think all of those options are valid, and it is a judgment call. And judgment calls don't usually feel good because they're usually good reasons to do many different things. And I really encourage people to get support, no matter how seasoned you are, like just to get some support from a colleague about those judgment calls. Okay, let's talk about time management. I already said this, but it's helpful to let people know what you're expecting in terms of an answer, and that will reduce the anxiety for people who want to do it right, and it'll help the people who are more luxurious with their thoughts kind of keep it shorter. Oh yeah, and that's a classic doorknobber, to have somebody bring up a big question right at the end. That doesn't usually happen to me, but I would just kind of restate what you just said. That's too big for us to talk about here. I'm happy to stay after class with you and we can talk about that. And if anybody wants to join us to talk about that, but we're gonna focus on our closing circle question. So I think it's really okay to not go through every possible idea associated with a topic. I mean, these are deep, right? We spend lifetimes talking about this stuff. And sometimes it's hard to leave a juicy topic behind for time's sake. Some people are going to be frustrated when you move it along. Many will be relieved. I really think that you can't always please everybody with that, or maybe everything. But validate, yes, there's a lot more to talk about this topic, and it's important, and we need to move on. That's your dilemma. And you can be transparent about that as a teacher. I'd love to talk about that. And this is only an hour long, or we only have 5 minutes left, or whatever. Encourage further exploration outside of class. I love to have a resource sheet with websites and, information where people can learn more. I think it's important to be real with yourself and only offer outside support if you have that to give. Okay, so you got people talking, that's good. Now, some people are anxious about how to respond. I think a lot of us have the habit of thinking we have to agree or disagree with everything that is said. And I would really challenge us to break that habit and to be more discerning about when we throw that in there. But acknowledgement for sure. Really thanking each person, and obviously that will be yucky if it's not sincere. So a sincere appreciation. A way to kind of keep the conversation going is to reflect back some of the key points that you heard, and especially as a facilitator, helping to identify some of the commonalities with what students are saying and some of the different approaches. Especially as you get into talking about setting boundaries, you know, some people will say, oh, that's easy, I just say blah, 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 and everybody else is going, whoa, you know. So I think that a range of comfort, a range of responses is really helpful for people to see. We share some experience of violence. We don't have time for you to answer this question. But I will say, I think that can be incredibly positive, and there are downsides. So this is one of those in the moment judgment calls. You have to decide if what the person brought up can be shared and given a little time, or if it needs to be contained. You might have to actually interrupt. I hate doing that. And asking the student to leave out details, or even to bring it to a close. And I say this, and I remind myself of this, but I'm not good at it. I'm almost always erring on the side of letting the person finish, for better or worse, and worse. They are tough judgment calls. I don't think you can get away from those tough judgment calls. And so please make it your practice to debrief and get support. And especially for those of you who have the benefit of co-facilitating, you can take that person back. Remember when I said that? Remember when I shut that person down? You know, like you have somebody who saw it, and you can really debrief better. Okay, whoa, a lot of text there. I think it's really important to correct incorrect information. Okay, some of us are so focused on respecting our students, which is good. We want to ignore an objectively incorrect statement, and I don't think we can do that. Sure, and when something's a matter of opinion, just thanking them, acknowledging them without agreement or without disagreement either, good. But if somebody brings something up that is truly factually incorrect, we owe it to them to provide the accurate information. And it's the, you know, strikes to the nose into the brain is where I see that most commonly. Anybody wanna, anybody have a wildly different idea about that? Okay, I'll think that's no. Okay. There will be difficult class dynamics. Here's some choices. You can address the issue indirectly by kind of just steering the class out of the weeds. Not always easy, but sometimes possible. Addressing the issue directly and matter-of-factly. Talking to the person or the people involved outside of class. That's often what I do. Sometimes it's okay to ignore it. If it's minor and you're moving along, it might work. But if it pops up again, it's probably time to deal with it. I do think we need to intervene when a student says something inappropriate. Even if you don't fully understand what's going on, you know, maybe you see people give each other looks, you don't have a clue of what's going on, but you can still act, even if you can't for sure name what just happened. And I am true to my culture, Protestant, white, we get so mealy-mouthed, and this is hard for us, but I take my lesson from my child's, when she was a child, a friend, sleepover. Some kids started doing a stereotypical Native American thing, and I clenched. I'm like, oh, I know I need to deal with this. What am I gonna say? Grind, gnash my teeth. And then the other kid just says, well, that's stereotypical of Native Americans. It's over. Laurel is my superhero model on that. Keep it simple, be direct without blaming or shaming. Thank you, Laurel. Sometimes it'll be so overwhelming that you just need to take a break, and I think that's okay. Most students are happy for another bathroom break. Another option is to just say, we're gonna have 5 minutes of some silent reflection, encourage people to get out paper and do a little writing about what's in the air or the topic at hand. You get that pause, then you have a chance to consult with your co-facilitator or go scream in the bathroom, whatever you need to do. I think we will all mess up in our facilitation. There are some situations that there's no great answer, no great way out. And if you catch it in time where people are still there, I think it's important to acknowledge your error, your judgment, poor judgment, and apologize either to the individuals or the whole class. It's an important part of modeling humility, growth mindset, just being human. We can all get better at this stuff. I'm a big fan of getting support. Talk to your mentors. And try to tend to your own brain in terms of how you think about your own mistakes. I think there's a lot of good stuff in the growth mindset world. Try to take that approach. And asking for feedback. Sometimes that stings. I still ask for feedback. But then really give yourself time to reflect on the feedback, make sure you understand the feedback, and revise, experiment, shift. ESD Global is like cranking out awesome trainings. There's lots of opportunities right now for training. So sometimes you get somebody who wants to argue. I think it's important to listen well. And once you understand enough of their point, acknowledge them. If you also are deciding this is not productive, to move it along. And some kind of, statement where you're accepting the disagreement. It's a huge topic. There's lots of ways to look at it, and we don't have time for it. So people don't usually get too upset by that, in my experience. People will share painful emotions. Staying centered is really important. Really reminding yourself to breathe. Give them some time and space. Acknowledge and validate what's going on. I also think you have the power of this whole group, and just really kind of encouraging and letting the group show their care and support. Sometimes you'll see people looking caring or nodding or something, and you can encourage the person to peek around the circle and see that people are, showing them gestures of support. Sometimes offering a hand, tissues, of course, a soothing voice. If you have a co-facilitator, you can offer that somebody goes to a quiet place with them to support them. There's lots of good principles in the tell part of empathy. Actively reflect back the emotion. I hear you describing anger, shame. Am I getting that right? And then bring in the rest of the class. I do this a lot. Raise your hand if you also have felt such and such. And then people have a chance to see. I mean, you know it's going to be most of the people are raising their hand. Or help them see it. I see a lot of people nodding in agreement or nodding in support. That's understandable. And later, debrief. Take care of yourself. Spend the time to notice, like, what came up for you. Whatever process you do around this will help you next time. Like, that's important. And even if you can't do that now, make a commitment, make a plan to address that with yourself. Monopolization happens, and it's hard. But restate the goal of sharing the time somewhat equally. Wait for your moment to get in there. Again, acknowledge whatever you can. And, you know, that person deserves support. But get in there, ask where they can get more time and support. You might need to apologize, but then move the group along. If your agreements are written, or you can just remind them, you know, this is a great thing to talk about, and we need to share the time, and so I'm feeling like we need to move along. Parking lot is a concept I use a lot, where you say, well, we don't have time for that now, but I'm going to write it down in our parking lot, and we'll see if we can fit that in later. And do that, like figure out where you're going to put that so that you remember to come back to it, or you'll lose credibility and trust. Nonverbal cues. Here's some other language to try to get other people involved. And sometimes that doesn't work. Some people are really dyed-in-the-wool monopolizers, and I have learned, I usually do this way too late, but to pull that person aside during a break, ask them how class is going, and then talk about trying to balance their sharing with other people's right to share. If there's any one lesson that I have learned too many times, it's like, talk to that person sooner. Talk sooner. Oh, I did it. We are done in time. Okay, you got this. Okay, I think our facilitation skills will improve mostly with experience, but definitely with reflection, experimentation, and support. We have an amazing community. Let's reach out to each other. Thank you, Bayan. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, ESD Global. I'm delighted to do this. I can't wait to reread the chats here. Happy to share the PowerPoint. Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate what you had to say. I wish we had time to hear from everybody more on all of that.